The oh, I just heard a message.
Yeah, that was me starting the recording. My apologies. We meant to start it sooner, but somebody reminded me here in the chat. So thank you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, thanks. Um, the the students are coming back. Classrooms are going well. Students are making their way to class on time. Students are making their way to the upper campus on time and no dilly-dallying along the way. So that was good to see. Other things that we realized are coming out, and we've heard about this in other cities and other districts as well. 18 months without the socialization of school contact. Young people have a lot of different responses to that. Some of them did come out at Oakland Tech that first week. There was 3 fights that I'm aware of Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Administrators and our culture keepers were responsive to that, spoke with the parents, with the students, find out what we need to do to support, brought in a restorative justice facilitator to begin that process of conflict resolution and so forth. I realized that I just mentioned culture keepers. Let me be clear about what our culture keepers are. One of the things that happened during the distance learning is the school board's resolution, the George Floyd resolution, that changed the emphasis of security and culture building on campus. So there's a different relationship with the Oakland Police Department. There is no longer an Oakland School Police Department. And we have culture keepers on campus. Many of these are the same people as our school security officers, our SSOs that you might be familiar with. And the training that they've received provides more of an emphasis on de-escalation, on helping students interact well with each other if they're changing classes in the hallways, just being present, developing a trusting atmosphere and developing trust among the young people with the culture keepers as adults that they can turn to if they come up against something that is beyond their capacity to really resolve, so that there are folks around in the hallways, on the schoolyard, that are available, along with the administrators in the office and also in the hallways and on the schoolyard. So that's what I mean by culture keepers. They no longer wear uniforms, they no longer carry handcuffs, other things like that, just to make sure that we are developing a culture of respect, certainly, but a culture that believes that conflicts can be resolved and that we can use our words in order to resolve those conflicts without resorting to any type of violence or harassment or some of the other negative behaviors that we might see. We're learning how to do this well, and I'm enthusiastic about what we are learning, because I've seen that there's a good relationship that's developing with our culture keepers and the students as they interact in the hallways. So with that in mind, there were, like I said, a few fights, but then on Friday there was something more serious, and I want to get into that. I'll share a bit about that, and then I will introduce our visitors from the district to also provide some kind of a contextual details about that. So the investigation of the shots that were fired outside Oakland Tech on Friday after school, that investigation is still ongoing. I haven't received definite information that I can share with you about whether there's any video footage or if the police have caught anyone. But there's been a concerted effort both by Oakland police, civic organizations, other youth violent reduction organizations. Youth Alive is an Oakland-based organization that is, I think they're based in Oakland. They have a branch in Oakland anyway, that specializes in helping communities reduce violence among youth. So all of these are involved in the investigation, and so that's still ongoing. What I'd like to do is address some questions that came up in the survey regarding specifically how Oakland Tech handles conflict, how we provide for the safety of the students and the adults on campus, and then I'll turn it over to our guest from the district. One of the questions is, what's the process for how fights and conflicts are handled on campus? And that's a good question, especially to ask at this point, because it's important for you to know as parents how your young people are being treated by school personnel, and how the resources that we bring to bear to help students resolve conflicts and resolve unsafe situations. So teachers are still probably the most aware of interactions between students because they see them in the classroom every day on a regular basis. Other things happen in the hallways that may need to be attended to or resolved. So we do rely on teachers to use a referral process to provide information to the administration of conflicts that they might become aware of. The fights that I had described happened outside of class time hours. They happened either at lunchtime or after school. And if that's the case, then it's probably going to be a culture keeper who brings it to our attention, and that has been the case for the incidents that I had mentioned. Culture keeper brings the student to one of our administrators, and then we work with the parents. We contact the parents. We speak with the young people person and make sure that we're de-escalating any tensions or agitation that might be occurring. We also contact our restorative justice coordinator at the outset so that she can be aware of the situation. Her skills focus on, first of all, creating a willingness to participate in a restorative justice process, either a harm circle, but most generally in this case, a harm circle, where different parties who are involved in this type of conflict can come together, can express the harm that they experienced, the feelings that they experienced during the incident, and move toward resolution. So she's a skilled conflict mediator as well. And she's already held some of those restorative justice circles. That is, yes, go ahead. No? So that is the basic contact that we have if there's a fight or conflict on campus. Unfortunately, we have needed to use suspension as a consequence because what we find at Oakland Tech is there has to be a hard line on fighting, that physical contact with the intent to harm another person. We cannot tolerate it, and our suspension is the consequence that we use to make that strong message initially. There are other types of conflicts or harassment where we can find alternatives to suspension, but for fighting in particular, we do impose suspension as a consequence. During that time of suspension is when our restorative justice facilitator is at work, contacting families, contacting students, arranging that willingness to come together and participate in a restorative justice process. So that is, I think, the process that we use for the most severe of conflicts, and then for fights as well. There may be some follow-up questions in the chat that I can address as well, but let me move on to the next question about our restorative justice facilitator. We have one, Tatiana Fuao is our restorative justice facilitator, and we also have resources at the district level, the restorative justice coordinators at the district level that we can draw on in a need, and they're willing to come and support us as well.
Can I just ask a follow-up here, Mr. Fairley? So
yes, please, that's fine.
There's one RJ coordinator for the entire school, correct? And then there are 4 culture keepers. And if a fight happens inside the school, then they are referred by the teacher. And if there's a fight outside, then one of the 4 culture keepers would most likely be the first person in response. Is that correct?
Let me see. Our culture keepers are, I think we have,
Are there 4?
I think we have 5. We've had a vacancy. We had some absences for partial days this week. But we're yeah.
We have a follow-up. What if parents and kids choose not to participate in the RJ process?
Then in one of the cases that we had, we had offered to reduce length of suspension if the parent and student on both sides would participate in the RJ process. If they did not, then we did not reduce the suspension. If they choose not to participate and the suspension, well, during that time of suspension, then we do create a cost referral. COST is an acronym for the Coordination of Services Team, and that is a team of service providers, therapists, clinicians, other types of community specialists who can work with parenting, with social emotional trauma, with other types of either behavior or anxiety, or many different types of troubles that that young people may experience. So we rely on that team as well to follow up, and the sessions that they schedule with students or families are confidential. So there's not a lot of description that I can give about that beyond the types of services that we're able to offer through COST. But that would be a follow-up as well. Certainly behavior plan, stern warnings, and further consequences if it turns out that the parties involved in the initial fight continue to get into something.
We have a couple follow-ups, but I want to just be cognizant of time. And if
right.
introduce who's here from the district level, if they were.
Yes, yeah, and they probably have some remarks that may be a little briefer than mine. So let me introduce our executive director, Vanessa Cifuentes, as well as our superintendent for the high school network, Martin Abdelquawi, who can also share some information from the district at this time.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Fairley. And I think I'm riding solo this evening. I don't see Martin. Oh, is he in here? Great.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I will let Martin introduce himself. But I'm Vanessa Cifuentes, Executive Director from the High School Network, and I provide direct support to Mr. Fairley and the site at Oakland Tech. It's one of the 5 sites that I supervise. Mateen, are you there?
I am. Greetings, everyone. Mateen Abdul Kawi. I'm the high school network superintendent. Definitely a pleasure to be here. My son's a graduate from Oakland Tech, so it's good to be back.
Well, thank you for having us. We know that the events of the last week have been pretty trying for everyone. And as as we've communicated to, I'm sorry. As we've communicated, as Mr. Fairley has communicated, there's been a number of different incidents that have taken place over the last, actually the first week of school that unfortunately did not just impact Oakland Tech, but impacted McClymonds High School, which is not too far away from Oakland Tech. But, as always, whenever there are incidents that threaten the safety and well-being of our students and staff, we take that very seriously. And we, in addition to implementing the systems and structures that we already have in place to respond, we also look at what we can be doing to further strengthen the supports that we can provide our school communities. So just a couple of things to note for everyone. We know that lots of different questions have been coming up, not just about the school response to Friday's incident, but also the district's response. So we do have a couple of things to share with you all in no particular order, but first and foremost, wanting to start with making sure that our students and staff had access to mental health resources from our community schools office. So as Mr. Fairley's communication stated, we've had different members from our behavioral health unit on site, and as of today, students and staff had access on in different locations throughout the campus to go and talk to someone. We wanted to make the resource available to anyone who was first and foremost directly impacted by the incident on Friday, students that may have been present and witnessed or heard the shooting, students who may have had to shelter in place because we know that that was a pretty traumatic experience. Beyond that, also just making sure that all students who wanted to process the events from Friday had space to do that. So, we know that those resources were available on site today, and the team was reassessing based on access and how many students accessed the resource today. And we're going to determine what the best course of action would be for the following few days to make sure that all students had an opportunity to connect with someone who they wanted to speak with if they wanted to speak about Friday's incident. Similar resources are made available to our staff because we know our staff was also impacted. So, that was also part of the district's response to Friday's incident, just making sure that we can help our staff and our scholars process, because we know folks sometimes need that space at school. Since Friday's incident, in addition to creating those spaces for staff and students to talk to someone, we've also been working pretty diligently behind the scenes with the Oakland Police Department. So we know that OPD is actively investigating both the incident that took place at McClymonds on Wednesday and Oakland Tech on Friday, and we know that those are active, ongoing investigations. And we're supporting their efforts as best we can. There's an investigation unit that's been involved, and they're working to be efficient and thorough in their investigation to make sure that they get to the bottom of the issue that did arise on Wednesday and Friday. So we continue to be in contact with Oakland Police, and we're awaiting their notice of any disclosable details that we can share about the incident. There's not much that we can share, one, because we're not on the front lines of the investigation, but two, because it is an ongoing investigation. but we are partnering with OPD on that front. In addition to that, I saw one of the questions in the parent survey. One of the questions that came up was around partnering with Oakland's violence prevention program. I'm happy to report that we actually just convened a meeting this morning with folks who work directly with the violence prevention program, folks from an organization that Mr. Fairley mentioned earlier, Youth Alive, folks that are community embedded supports that try to work on community-led intervention strategies to support families across the city of Oakland. We are actually in the process of setting up some pretty regular communication, both at the network level across all of the high schools, so that we're in proactive communication with these folks who may find out about things that are bubbling up in the community that may have an impact on our schools, so that we can respond in a timely fashion, as well as identifying how these different community partners can work and connect with our folks at school sites. Folks like our RJ coordinators, our culture keepers, culture and climate ambassadors, so that they can be at the ready and we're not caught off guard based on things that are happening in the community. I would say that that piece is pretty significant, because what we're finding is that the incident both Wednesday and Friday, they're neighborhood issues. They're issues that are, have been ongoing for some time, and are things that are unfortunately spilling into our school sites. So we are in active communication and setting up regular collaboration meetings with folks from those departments, because we know that they can be very helpful in preventing issues from escalating at our school sites. Part of the additional response from the district, as Mr. Fairley has mentioned, they have their own team of culture keepers and culture and climate ambassadors, but we're also deploying our central culture and climate ambassadors to these two sites, just to be an extra presence to help stabilize and just be a welcoming face to kind of help everyone renorm after last week's events. So that's just one of our enhanced safety measures. And like Mr. Fairley already talked about, the work that the culture and climate ambassadors and the culture keepers do. And so it's just monitoring, creating positive presence, positive culture, welcoming students back, letting them know that they have people looking out for them on campus, and just being a presence, as well as additional staff from different district departments, community schools, attendance and discipline, the high school network office. Folks have been at the schools for the last couple of days and will continue to do that. On a more systemic level, some of the things that we're looking at after last week's incidents are just, fine-tuning our surveillance and camera systems across the board. We know that's been a sore spot, not just at Oakland Tech, but at all of our high schools practically. We are in the process of transitioning from some very outdated analog surveillance cameras to digital, more high definition cameras that can help us get a better sense of what's happening in real time. And that transition has taken a while, but we are expediting those kinds of requests and just making sure that we're evaluating our systems across all of the school sites, and making sure that we're installing additional cameras where there may be blind spots, upgrading video software. And so Mac and Tech are on that list at the moment. I also mentioned earlier, just making sure that we're communicating clearly, proactively, not just among our district departments that support with discipline and safety, but also with our different community partners, so that we're all on the same page about what's happening and we can have a coordinated effort when it comes to supporting school sites that may need support around safety. And then finally, just working with our school principals to make sure that the policies, procedures, and protocols that are in place for situations like those that happened last week are that they're fine-tuned, that they adequately address the needs that we're seeing come up when these types of issues come up, and that our response procedures are tight. So, we're working on a number of different levels to address the concerns that came up last week, and definitely want to also hear more from families and particularly students around some of the things that would be what are the things that we can continue to do to help students and staff and families feel safe at while they're at school. So I'll pause there. That was a lot of information. So any questions or comments, and pardon the background noise. I'm sorry. I'm going to mute myself.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, first of all, for coming, joining everyone that has come and made yourself available tonight. There are a couple follow-ups that keep sort of bubbling up in this chat. One, and I don't know if you can speak to this, people would like to understand the distinction if people know the shots were fired towards the school or away from the school, in terms of if that would somehow make a difference in terms of safety protocols, if you could answer that. And then I have one more question after.
Mr. Fairley, do you mind chiming in on that question?
I
Since you were there
don't-
on Friday.
Yeah, I haven't received that information. I was across the street at the donut shop parking lot when the shots were being fired. I saw smoke in the area of 45th Street, but I couldn't tell. I mean, it looked like it was coming from across the street, across 45th Street, from where the school was. I haven't received any details or investigation results from the police, however.
Okay, and then I just want to reiterate something that you said in the chat, because people were asking how students were being notified if to find these mental health services on campus. I just wanted to reiterate that you said that they were being notified in person in their classes as to where they can find mental health services on campus, correct?
Mhm.
Okay.
And there are signs posted as well.
Okay.
The therapist who worked with us advised that really in this type of situation, dealing with this type of trauma, that in person rather than a loud announcement would be more effective.
Okay, great. And then there was one more that parents were notified through a robocall, and then we got an email that night. But there's some questions around how students could possibly be notified. And if there's anything, because parents can get a text, right, that there's something happening on campus, but is there anything set in place where students could also get a text? Because the way that the information seemed to sort of come through is that students were coming home or texting their parents. And is there any sort of protocol that could allow for a text to go out to students themselves?
Yeah, we've this the whole experience caught us a little unprepared because it happened so early in the year, and just trying to get things organized at the school when this is going on. We do have our communication teacher on special assignment who is addressing communications, and she does a good job of getting things ready for Instagram, for example, as well as I don't know if Parent Square would be the best one or one of the other text message services, but we're definitely looking into that so that she can work with that as well and be a support to me in getting that information out.
Okay. And then there were some questions around the fact that students should not be out front after school, but if they don't have an after school, you know, if they're not part of the after school program, is there some place that they can be, and sort of how is the outside campus being secured after school, and what's the expectation on students in terms of hanging out on the lawn or moving to a different location, or if they're waiting for a parent or a bus?
Yeah, thank you for that question. What we're looking into is making sure that the study area, the after-school tutoring in the library, we haven't reached capacity on any of these days yet. So that space is available. If we need to expand the common area space, we're considering using the cafeteria or perhaps the patio outside the cafeteria. where students can gather informally and get some schoolwork done. As far as the front lawn, we've moved our after-school program activities inside. So the wonderful barbecue that we had for ninth and 10th grade with the vaccination booth there, that type of event is on hold until we feel more confident about the safety in the community and let things, well, we need to see how things develop. I need to, I guess, describe just briefly, I've been at the school for 25 years, and this is the first incident like this that I've experienced at Oakland Tech. We have been very fortunate, of course, but the whole culture of the students, the way that the teachers and adults work with the students there, the way the parents support, oh man, that we have there at the school is really amazing. It's really strengthening, and I see a resilience at the school that is encouraging to me, and I'm really expecting to see that resilience come through. So we're definitely doing the safety planning. We typically, the drills that we have are scheduled for October, September, October, and then another drill in December and so forth, just to help that everyone remember how to behave during a fire or an earthquake, or if we need to have a lockdown. So we're accelerating that schedule and getting the teachers, preparing the training for the teachers so that we can have those drills earlier than October, and really build on the interest that we have right now in keeping each other safe.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. We do need to move on to COVID related questions. I don't know if there's any final words. We will collect all of these questions and make sure to get some sort of posting out for all the questions that went unanswered. So I just want to make people feel reassured that we are working on that. But I don't know if anyone has any final words that they want to say in terms of the safety on campus, both physical, emotional, or otherwise. Good.
One ask, just one quick ask. I know we mentioned, we've talked about this internally, and I mentioned this a few moments ago, but I really, I appreciate the open lines of communication with families at Oakland Tech, and that folks will bring up ideas and make suggestions. I see a lot of already in the chat, but I think if you can ask your students and let us know, communicate with Mr. Fairley, what are the things that they're saying that they want that would help them feel safer on campus? That would be a huge help to us. I think we would love to hear some of that anecdotal data from you all, and we'll figure out a way to get some more concrete data from students at the school. But we just encourage you to please communicate with us. Sometimes young people don't communicate with us directly, but they may tell you. So what are they telling you? Please share that with us because we really want to be responsive to their needs.
Yeah, I think that's great. Yeah, I think that families can ask their students, and we can even streamline that a little bit and try and get that information to Mr. Fairley, who then can get it to you, Vanessa. So, okay, we are going to move on. I know there are so many questions and concerns. I want to thank you both so much for your time. And we are going to move on to COVID related questions. Thank you so much for attending.
So I believe our COVID special projects coordinator of the district, Salajas Suresh, is here. I'm not sure though.
I'm here. Hi.
Oh, hi.
Hello, welcome. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us.
Sure. Yes, happy to be here. Hi, everyone. Good evening. My name is Salaja Suresh. I do all things COVID for the district. So I've been leading the COVID response since last spring. And this is my, I think, going on 15th year in the district. I previously was just down the street at Oakland International High School, where I was a founding teacher and a principal there for a number of years. Just want to, thank everyone for entering this school year with a tremendous amount of just grace for all of the new things that everyone is going through, you all as family members and parents, and for our children and for staff as well. So I'm going to spend just a few minutes talking kind of high level around some of our safety protocols that are in place this year for COVID, and try to address some of the questions that I think came in ahead of time. And hopefully we'll try to get to most people's big questions, and then of course we'll pause and take new questions as well. So there's two documents that I want to share with folks tonight. And so I'm not sure if I have the ability to share screen, but would love to do that if I can.
Absolutely. Hold on one second. There you go. You should be able to now as a co-host.
Thank you so much. Okay.
So,
Great. So the first document that I put in the chat is just a high level overview that the city has asked us for, that other partners have asked us for, of like, can you just tell us, in each of these areas, what's happening? Just give us a little bullet point. And so as many of you have probably heard, in terms of vaccines, we announced last week, we will be requiring all of our staff to get vaccinated. And so we've given them a couple of weeks to upload proof of their vaccination status. And starting on September 7th, if you are a staff member in OUSD and you are not vaccinated, then you will have a weekly testing requirement. So you'll have to go get tested for COVID every week if you're not already vaccinated by the 7th. The good news is that of the staff members who have already reported their status to us, which is self-reported, that's almost 4,000 of our staff members out of a little bit more than 5,000 district-wide. Most of them, 92% of them, have said that they are already fully vaccinated. So we feel like this is a pretty achievable goal to get ourselves to a place where almost 100% of our staff in our schools will be fully vaccinated. We're also continuing to work with the county to stand up vaccine pop-ups at our secondary schools. We've had a couple at Tech so far to really push vaccinations amongst our secondary students as well right now. We're also offering testing throughout the district. We have a couple of different testing models that we're working on, and we're going to be growing more over the next few weeks. And we've been partnering with the state around our testing program. So we have regional testing locations. The closest one to you all at Oakland Tech is down the street at Oakland International. There's another one at Santa Fe, and each of those are open a couple of days a week. Free testing is available there for family members, for staff, for students. And we offer both rapid tests as well as PCR tests with the intent of, obviously, if there's a positive rapid, we want to honor that as quickly as possible. But we also want to use the more sensitive PCR tests so that if there's some early infections, some asymptomatic infections, we can catch that as well, and then respond to that within the 2 days when the PCR result is returned to us. We've also been deploying some rapid response teams. So when we are notified of an on-site exposure, when there was a student or a staff member who was on campus during their infectious period, which is determined by the date of symptom onset or the date of the positive test, and mapping backwards 2 days before that, we will send out a team to the school site to provide testing to anyone who is doing the modified quarantine protocol in response to a case. And I'll explain what that is in a second. And then we also have at-home testing kits that we've sent out to our sites. So all of these programs are supported by the state. They are increasing our staffing capacity. They're sending us more testers. They're sending us more tests, all the different kinds, so that we can scale the program as big as we need to while we're still dealing with the Delta surge right now. Masking is required both indoors and outdoors, and this is something that in those first couple of days of school, we heard from a lot of families, a lot of principals as well, of particularly for the young children, really just teaching and norming and reinforcing that mask wearing behavior, and having that consistency indoors as well as outdoors, recognizing that in outdoor recess, outdoor sports, that it's pretty common for kids to be in crowds together, close together. And so we wanted to have masks to make sure that we were being kind of consistently safe across the board. We've upgraded ventilation everywhere. So for any built-in HVAC units, those have been upgraded to MERV 16 filters. We have the air purifiers in the classrooms as well. And then we have a contact tracing system and team that we've built up over the course of the last year. And we are monitoring cases as they're reported to us at sites across the district. So essentially what happens is, if we are notified of a positive case on site, so somebody who's actually at our sites during their infectious period, we do a couple of things. So when we are notified, we immediately assign a contact tracer. They're divided up by network. And so there's one person, actually 2 people who are assigned to high schools. And they immediately reach out to the family, say, hey, we received a report of a positive case. Is it true? Tell us what happened. When did your symptoms start? And basically walk through the timeline to find out, was this person actually on campus during their infectious period? If it turns out they were, then we would initiate communication with the administration on site to identify, what classes was the student in, who are the staff members who might have been in prolonged close contact. In the interview with the family, we also ask, who are the individuals that you might have been in prolonged close contact with during the time when you were infectious on campus. Prolonged close contact, again, defined as closer than 6 feet for longer than 15 minutes. And then all of those individuals are then notified. They're either notified centrally by the contact tracer, or they are notified by the site, where the site says, hey, individuals that might have been in
at the school clinic. Well, there was a vaccine
Thank
on
you.
Okay, thanks. So the school will send out 2 letters in response to a positive case, one to the close contacts. So the other students who might have been in classes where this positive individual was, as well as 1 letter to the community that says, hey, Oakland Tech community, we were notified of a positive case. We're following the protocols that as instructed, and letting people know. For the students who might be impacted by the positive case, because maybe they were identified as a prolonged close contact, a couple of things are true. The first thing that is true is that individual who is identified as a prolonged close contact needs to pay attention to their vaccination status, right? Because the CDC, the CDPH has different guidance for if you are a vaccinated prolonged close contact and an unvaccinated prolonged close contact. If you are a vaccinated prolonged close contact, you should come to school. You should come to work. And so that is true both for staff as well as for students. If you were an
Go ahead, I'll wait.
sorry. if you are an unvaccinated prolonged close contact and you're a staff member, you should quarantine at home for the full 10 days. If you are an unvaccinated student who is in prolonged close contact, then we would look at, were you masked, were you unmasked? Assuming you were in school and this exposure happened at school, which is the cases that we respond to centrally, are only on-site exposure cases that we learn about. If you were in prolonged close contact at school, for example, in one of your classes, then we say, please come to school. We are prioritizing, under the direction of the state's guidance, we are prioritizing in-person education. So you're going to participate in what's called a modified quarantine, which means you come to school, you get tested at school, and you do that for 10 days following the last date of your exposure. And then obviously, if there's another positive case, we would then respond to that positive case, send that kid home or send that adult home if they're positive, and then again, retrace to find any additional contacts. If we identify 3 cases in a specific class. So let's say like second period English with Miss Salisha. If there were 3 contacts, if there were 3, positive cases that happened in that class, and the timeline, we review this with the Alameda County Public Health Department with their outbreak team. If the timeline appears such that those individuals would have overlapped on the same days on campus, and the date of when they tested positive was approximately within 2 to 5 days of each other within a 2-week span, the county would then advise us to close that specific class down. So every time there's a positive case at a secondary site, we basically map out that student schedule and start highlighting where there might have been multiple cases in a specific period, so that if we do need to escalate it, we can. And then one other thing I'll just say about this is for the cases that we're seeing, we recognize there's a lot of interest, and there's a lot of anxiety, there's a lot of nervousness about this, which is entirely understandable. We did publish a case dashboard, which went live today, that shows where we have had any of these classroom closures. So any of the at-home quarantines where we're advising, there have been 3 or more cases in this classroom. We were advised by the county that we should do an at-home quarantine instead of a modified quarantine. So you can see where those have come up, and basically which classrooms, or not which classrooms, but which schools have classrooms that are doing at-home quarantines as of this week. And then you can see our totals from last week. And, one of the reasons that we're sort of paying attention to like updating this on a weekly basis is we want the data to be as accurate as possible. We respond to cases and try and complete all the tracing within 24 hours. And sometimes that's really easy to do because everyone's really easy to get in touch with, and there are no language barriers. And sometimes that is really hard to do because it's really hard to get in touch with people, and there are language barriers, and the time lag between when it is reported to the school and when it is reported to us and when we can contact the family sometimes can take longer than 24 hours. So we try and submit them as quickly as possible. And I think with all the cases we've seen thus far, we've pretty much been able to close out every case within the 24-hour period. And so then one other thing that I will just drop in the chat, and then I will open it up to questions, is, this is a lot to take in. It's a lot for a new school year, for you as the adults who are holding your own stress and anxiety and confusion, and also holding our young people through all of this at the same time. And the guidance is changing, right? Like every week, it feels like there's new guidance from the county or the state or the CDC. And so we are continually trying to make sure that our protocols get updated as soon as that guidance changes as well. So we created this little cheat sheet for protocols around what happens when someone tests positive, when it's a staff member, when it's a student. What happens when someone is symptomatic, when it's a student, when it's a staff? What happens when someone is in prolonged close contact? Just so that we can refer people to that and say, these are the guidelines that we are trying to consistently follow in every case. And when the guidance does change, we try and update all of these documents so that everything stays aligned. So I will go ahead and pause there and then just see if there are any questions.
There are. There are many questions. I think that new dashboard and that cheat sheet is going to be very helpful. That was a lot of information. Thank you so much. One question that's come up that I don't believe you addressed is that we have students who are vaccinated, who are determined to be in prolonged contact, but they're asymptomatic. And so people say they should come to school, but there isn't like an exact recommendation on whether a vaccinated teen should test if they've been in prolonged contact. And I think that's where a lot of confusion is coming up, and where there's a lot of sort of informal contact tracing happening between families and friend groups.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think some guidance in terms of what a vaccinated teen should do if they know they've been in prolonged contact, even if they haven't been contacted by the school, or even if they have, is the recommendation that they get tested.
Yeah. So the CDC updated their guidelines a couple of weeks ago, I think. So for any vaccinated prolonged close contact, that the recommendation is that you do go get tested about 3 to 5 days after exposure. Now, a lot of exposure happens off campus, right? Like it doesn't necessarily happen at school. We do not contact trace for things that happened at non-OUSD things. Like we certainly don't have the capacity for that. The county does have their own contact tracing team where when cases are reported to them, they follow up to try and, sort through who needs to be interviewed and what advice needs to be given. And they have, basically just coordinated with us to say, if a case is reported to you on one of your sites, on one of your campuses, your contact tracing team will do that. And partially that's capacity on their end as well. They don't have a huge contact tracing team or case investigation team either.
Mm-hmm.
And so they really need us to own the cases that are happening that we are learning about on our campuses.
There's another question about how can absences be excused when students stay home due to symptoms? And now that they've returned, will the absences be excused, meaning they're not truant? And how can families get their work from teachers? So how are we sort of going to coordinate that as we have students coming in and out?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. So I think there are a couple of answers to that, right? So for our guidelines internally that we've given to our attendance clerk, if a child is out on quarantine for symptoms or a positive case or any other public health reason where we're like, stay home, those absences are excused as far as we're concerned, OUSD. As far as the state is concerned, an absence is an absence is an absence. And that is their guidance this year. I think that part of the reason why this is their guidance, that was again written kind of pre-Delta, was to say, hey, we're coming back to school, please come to school. So recognizing that there is an inherent issue there, that when we report our absences to the state, we report our absences. In terms of getting access to work, there has always been the option of doing short-term independent studies. So if someone was going on vacation or if someone was recovering from the flu and they were at home, the school can enroll that student in short-term independent study at home. I believe that in the state of California, you can do it up to 15 days. In the academic year and get the work from your teachers to do that work over that time.
Okay, and then just 2 more questions, and then I think we are going to have to move on, unfortunately. So there is, you mentioned the 10 sites, and then there's also, but if we have a case on campus, then a team comes to do testing on site, correct? So in reality, if we're getting, someone testing positive every couple of days, does that mean that we're going to have testing weekly on site? And there's been some questions, and maybe this is more for Mr. Fairley, about where exactly that testing is happening and how students can have access to it.
Yep. Yeah, so yes, we send out tests. We send out the testing team in response to when we do learn about a positive case. We are prioritizing for those teams to test the individuals that were identified in prolonged close contact. For a school the size of Tech, we try and make sure that the team is out there for as long as possible, all day if needed, following up the next day as much as possible. And that's one of the reasons why we're asking for more testers from the state, so that we can, particularly at the bigger sites, like stand up those testers for longer. But the priority is getting the individuals that were positively identified as in close contact to get testing so they can continue to participate in the modified quarantine and stay in school. And then if there's additional capacity, then certainly anyone else who wants to get tested during that time can.
Okay, and then we have one final question that is many people are asking. There's been a lot of reports of teachers not wearing their masks in the classroom, and students feeling very uncomfortable with that, and also not knowing how to properly report it to the school site, and that there has been some unevenness in terms of teachers wearing masks and also teachers mandating students wearing masks and eating in the classroom. And families feel really different about this, depending on the family situation. So I think families really want to know how to handle that situation.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I'm not sure what the on-campus procedures are for like reporting really any kind of safety concern or issue. I'll let Mr. Fairley speak to that. Certainly you're welcome to, there's a little poster, there's a little QR code that was put up at every school at the front of the building. And like if you put in your concern, that actually comes to me. It also comes to our risk management officer for the entire district. And so she looks through it every week, and there's a concern that's raised at Oakland Tech. And she's like, gosh, it looks like there were 5 parents, 10 parents, 20 parents who were really concerned about teachers not wearing masks. Mr. Fairley, we should talk about that. What are we going to do? How can we address that issue? So that's sort of how we're handling it at a district level, since we're not in every school. I think that's one thing. The other thing that we're doing at a district level is we have identified safety leads at every school and are requiring that safety leads do walkthroughs twice a month. And so that's both for checking on practices and protocols, like are people actually doing the things that we're telling them to do, and to make sure that the site is adequately stocked in terms of PPE, in terms of air purifiers, like is something missing, does something need to be replaced, does something need to be reordered, because we need to have those eyes on the ground to make sure that we are supplying schools properly.
Great. Mr. Fairley, did you want to add something really quick? And then we're going to have to move on, unfortunately.
Yeah, so we have informed teachers that if a student's not wearing a mask or refuses to wear a mask correctly, that we do treat that as behavior concern and ask for a referral to that, to an administrator for that, so that we can address that with the student and the family. For a teacher not wearing a mask, actually today is the first day that came to my attention, and I'm hearing it in the meeting here tonight. That is definitely a situation where we would implement progressive discipline. So I would be certainly in contact with that teacher as soon as we receive a report like that, and implement progressive discipline for that employee.
Okay, great. All right. Well, again, we super appreciate your time. Thank you so much for coming to our meeting. I know you're a super busy woman and dealing with this across the district. So thank you for coming. We appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks.
All right. Thank you. Okay, we are going to move on. And we are a little bit behind. So I am going to ask one very burning question that has come up, that is a school campus question, Mr. Fairley, that I'm hoping you can answer in this meeting, which is the situation with PE. So I am, oh, hold on one second. Okay, yes, so we are going to move on. We had scheduled about 10 minutes for questions that were specific to tech. We got several, which I think we can frankly post later. But I think one question that people is really high on people's minds is the PE question. So it's really 3 parts, Mr. Fairley, if you have it in front of you, otherwise I can go over it. But one of the most important questions that people are asking is, one, will club sports count for PE? And I'm wondering if you can answer that now.
Yes, I can answer it prospectively. And if there are questions about last spring, I would need to be clear on what those questions are as well. But the policy that we have posted on oaklandtech.com, we updated it last September, I believe. For those designated club sports, there's been no change in 5 credits of PE for a semester of the club sport for those designated sports.
So everything that's listed on the website for PE credit, that's current. So can we just direct parents to that policy? It's pretty comprehensive.
Yes.
Okay. Then I am going to move on because I will post that in IO chat and put it in the bullhorn so people know. But that is a question that people have asked time and time again. I don't know if people we have about 5 minutes where people could ask questions that are specific to tech. We had a few others, but I think in the interest of time, the only one that I think people also really wanted to get answered is what to do if they are trying to get in touch with their counselor and they can't get in touch with their counselor and they are trying to change their schedule. They don't know how to proceed.
So yeah, it's it's a very full beginning of the school year, and counselors are being slammed with course change requests. The online course change request form is still the best way to get the request in line, because counselors are going through those as quickly as they can. Some of the difficulty in changing the schedule is related to the 7-period bell schedule, and that Monday when all of the classes meet. Our goal is not to leave a gap in a student's schedule, so that a student can be in a content area class, elective and so forth every period on Monday. But the counselors are getting to it as quickly as possible, and that's still the best way for the rest of this week. Then counselors will be more available starting next week.
Okay, great. And then we just have one final question, and then we're going to move on because we have to talk about our budget as well. We've had a few questions about classes that don't have teachers yet. And there's a few parents that are asking if you can speak to what happens if a class still does not have a teacher. A lot that they're just a little unclear if, one, the student has to stay in the class after attendance is taken, particularly because of COVID, and two, how long that will go on for.
Well, we have hired a replacement for a Spanish teacher that needed to go out, transition to a different site, as well as our US history teacher who needed to transition to a different site as well. We do still have an opening in computer science that we're trying to fill. We've had several interviews and just didn't, one reason or another, the candidate didn't follow through with that particular hiring. So we're very close to being fully staffed. There were some structural concerns with a class that we call community engagement. It had been our 11th and 12th grade students going to the local elementary schools as teacher supports, teacher assistants, and that was not possible given the COVID variants that are going on. So we are rescheduling those students into a different elective, and the counselors are working with them on that. That's most of the classrooms that don't have teachers at this point. So it should be very close to being fully staffed. But for attendance purposes, we are asking students to remain in the class, and providing, we have, for instance, for the Spanish, for the Spanish class, we have a former Spanish teacher who's providing the curriculum for that. Same way with the US history class, the teacher's providing the curriculum. The teacher who actually transitioned away is providing the curriculum, and this for the substitute teacher who's there.
I just want to mention one more thing, because I was just told that the AOL commissioner is actually on the call, and there were some questions around if all, maybe they could, I'm sorry, I'm missing the name. If they want to come off speaker, if the AOL commissioner is here and can come off speaker, actually, just to speak very briefly about the way that it works for the sports credit for PE. And
yes, I'm here. How you doing? Good evening.
How are you?
Good. It's Frankie Navarro. So it's always a pleasure to be with you. Yes, the PE credit from a sports perspective is always handled by school sites. From my end and our office, we do keep track and record of those that have participated for the roster. So athletic directors have full access, administrators, for those that want to verify if a student did participate. But the OIL in itself does not issue out the credit. What we can do is verify that students have participated. Moving into this last year, with everything, we moved to an online registration system. and we have maintained that online registration system throughout this year and for years to come. So students are to register, and from then, once selected for a roster, we create official roster forms that we maintain throughout the remainder of the year.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
So if there's always any questions and need verification, this is for parents. Feel free to always reach to my office, and we can provide that and support, school sites if credit is missing. But again, just the actual approval of the PE credit is done for at the school sites. And again, once again, my name is Frankie Navarro, the Oakland Athletic League Commissioner.
Okay, great. Could you put your email in the chat by any chance?
Yes, I'll drop it in and
Great.
drop it in the chat for sure.
Okay, excellent. And we will save all of the information in the chat, and I'll make sure to consolidate it and get it out. Okay, we are already behind, so I am going to close the questions at this time, but I promise you we will work on getting these all answered. And I appreciate that. Thank you very much. So in the interest of time, we were going to make a very quick plug for parent volunteerism. So I'm going to pass it over to Courtney Riley for about 2 minutes. If Courtney, are you still here, Courtney?
Yes.
Okay, great. If you want to just talk a little bit about volunteering and have people fill out the form, that'd be great.
Sure. I put the volunteer form in the chat, and you all should be able to access a Google document which you can express your interest in the particular programs that we have openings available for at Oakland Tech. We are in need of parent involvement. Part of what makes the school work, as you know, during the day, we have teachers who are teaching our students, but the parents behind the scenes help to get the mechanics going. All of you, I've been reading and commenting, on some of the subject matter, and I know you all have opinions and skills, I'm sure, to share with the group, resources, interests, etc. So we love to have you on board. I don't want to waste my 2 minutes, but we do have slides that will probably be going out after this meeting. And you can read a little bit more about the programs and the departments that have a need for parent involvement. Please sign up. Please be involved. Please go to the website and sign up for the PTSA and pay your dues so that we can help get the school up to, what we hope and want for our children. Was that fast enough?
That was perfect. Thank you so much, Courtney. So Courtney's our VP of programs. We are still working to build all these committees. And like she said, we will share, we're gonna have a special bullhorn later in the week that will share all the different volunteer opportunities. So we encourage you to sign up. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Andrea, who many of you already know, who is now our treasurer this year, to talk about the budget. Andrea.
Thank you so much. So I have a few things that I need that are just kind of, I don't know, the work. The first thing I want to report on, this isn't the slide I want, is how we ended up last year. And just to show you how we are very successful at our fundraising. We have very supportive and generous families. We have very supportive and generous community members. And so we're always able to raise a good amount of money. One question that someone asked ahead of time was, how did our fundraising do last year over the prior year? We didn't raise as much money as we have in the past, but we raised more than we expected. So we lowered our overall fundraising expectations and exceeded them. So we raised about $200,000, and We spent about $217,000, but we do have a nice cushion from prior years. So we definitely, we came in under our budget because we do try and spend what we have in our accounts, because that's why people give. They give to support the school. So our biggest expenses last year were, we supported another person to help with technology on implementing the Oakland Undivided rollout, and to help teachers and staff get all of they got new technology as well. Another big thing that we did was we supported a teacher, part-time. Miss Arnaldi was able to teach fewer courses and to support communications. She runs OTHS Connections Instagram account, You Meet World Instagram account. She is an editor of our Bullhorn, and she does all the advisory notes. So everything your kid was seeing every morning in advisory last year, she was putting that together. And we were able to support her reduced schedule so that her reduced teaching schedule so she could work on that. We are really excited that she's going to be a teacher on special assignment this year and continuing to work in this area, because it is so beneficial for our kids. There were a lot of things we weren't able to spend our money on because they didn't happen. Some student activities, field trips, and so forth. So I'm gonna switch over to what our proposed budget is, because I'll throw all these in the chat in a second. We're mostly holding the course on our budget, keeping things the same. We went up a little bit because we want to continue to spend down our reserves. We have, since Miss Arnaldi's salary is completely covered by the district, we're now proposing to work with Mr. Fairley on having a position that could help be a spirit coordinator, a community culture support person who could help throw events. And we're thinking we want to think creatively about what that position could be to kind of bridge parent and teacher activities, student activities, and what the administration can use support on for ramping up school spirit efforts. That's the biggest change. The action that's our change on the expenditure side. Again, give me a second. And we went back up a bit in our budget because we think in person it'll be a little easier to do more fundraising. We did have a really successful auction. It looks like this didn't line up exactly correctly. This should be an auction line. But we had a really successful auction. We exceeded our expectations. So I think we're going to kind of stay at that level of what we raised, around 95,000, and continue to work with our people's employers and our community partners to raise more money there. So notwithstanding this typo, I'm going to just ask whether I would like to make a motion to approve this budget. If we could, let me know if you have any questions beforehand.
Questions first. I was going to say, maybe we should just make sure we take time for questions first.
Right. Good idea.
Does anyone have any questions about the budget? And if so, then pop them in the chat. We'll give a few minutes. And if not, I see that someone is up. Okay. We just have one. I guess I'm wondering how the spirit coordinator is defined.
Yeah, that's a great question. We haven't defined it yet. We want to work with Mr. Fairley, obviously, and his administrative staff to figure out what is going to be the best format for that. I know Jessica's reaching out to other schools that have a similar position to see
Yeah.
what that would look like, but it would be, you know, kind of across, like help with pep rallies, help with the dances, help with the prom, not run them, but help support the kind of logistical side of it. So, okay, what is the plan for dues? Well, I'm not the best person to ask for that. Janelle McBride is our VP of membership, and we are currently working to increase our membership. And on the treasurer side, I just need to do a better job of accounting for what part of it is dues and what part of it is contributions. Because as you recall, last year we decided to lower our dues amount to $5 and invite people who don't feel that they can pay at that rate to join for free. And we have people who are sponsoring memberships. And right now we actually have more people sponsoring memberships than we have people asking for memberships. So one thing that we may talk about in the future is whether we offer free memberships to students, for example, or free membership to teachers, or free memberships to families, you know, on some group basis. We haven't really talked about that, but that's something that's going to be an ongoing, discussion. I'm seeing some requests about whether the position could be to fill Ms. Hunter. Ms. Hunter is our college and career specialist, and she's moved to another job. My understanding is that the district and the school administration are working very diligently to fill that position. And my hope would be that a person in a spirit coordinator position would help support that, because Ms. Hunter did a lot, or especially around graduation, Black excellence, college and career activities, as well as decision day. So yeah, they're on it for hiring that, but we do want to make sure that that position supports it.
Yeah, I also had a conversation with Mr. Holliday, who does the career portion of the College and Career Center, and he was interested in thinking through, I think this position could potentially intersect with that entire department, and some overlap with the sports as well, and even a little bit of RJ. We are in the midst of sort of gathering information and want to create like a one-pager, basically like a job description, right? So if people want to help out with that, we're more than excited to have your input and help.
Go ahead.
Someone had a question too about what is the recommended amount for annual fund donation. I just wanted to address that really quickly because we didn't actually get to go over all the slides for volunteering. Yeah. Oh, Mick is already, so Mick's our development person. Yeah, we don't have a recommended amount. You can donate as little or as much as you want, but donate as much as you can. And we were going to make a plug for matching donations as well. So if your corporation or job does matching donations, make sure that you file that paperwork, because that is money that often gets left on the table.
We also have Amazon Smiles, eScript. A lot of companies use either Benevity or another charity matching program. Please inquire with your job how that might work, because we do raise a decent amount of money that way, and it's passive. You don't even have to do much other than designate us as the organization, and we are a tax exempt organization, so your donations to the annual fund are deductible. So I'm happy to continue answering questions online and offline, but in the interest of time, I just wanted to, and again, this is a budget. In the course of the year, if the membership wants to change direction on anything, we are open to doing it. We try to be flexible. We try and meet the needs of what the community wants. These amounts have fluctuated over time. ASAP, for folks who don't know, is our African American Student Action Planners. Those are African American families who are organized around African American student achievement, college readiness, and other activities for our African American scholars. In the past, we've had higher amounts, to support hospitality budget. We also have our historically black college tour that we support. This is actually a very small part of that budget. The students themselves, about 40 students visit HBCUs every year and do some of the fundraising themselves. And so we're really excited to support those programs among all the other ones here that, as I said, we can answer questions about. So I'm sorry about the dog.
Why don't we do a motion and then we can sort of wrap up? So do you want to?
Yeah, so I'd like to move to adopt this as our budget for the 2021-22 school year.
We have a second.
There's a second.
Katrina Sava, second.
Thank you,
Great.
Katrina.
So I actually have a poll. Let's launch this. So I created a poll for the motion to approve our 2021-2022 budget. And you can just hit yes, no, or abstain. And I'm going to launch it now because it's the easiest way to do it on Zoom. So let's take a minute to vote. I hear your dog. Okay. Give it just another moment. I put the proposed budget in the chat. Okay, looks like the yeses have it and the budget is adopted for the 2021-2022. As I keep rolling, I'll let them roll in for another moment, but it looks like we're good. Do you have anything else you wanted to share, Andrea?
I do. I have one more thing. It has been, we are required to get our membership support for our, to ratify our checks. And so I put that in the chat and I'm going to post it here. We actually haven't ratified checks since April because we've been so busy. This is like not a very helpful format because the numbers are not on the same page. So I apologize for that, but you can see what all of our check expenses have been. Some of them are spelled out across different expenses. So for example, check 4250 went to Ms. Pines for ceramic supplies, and she had 5 different vendors that she sourced her ceramics materials from. And amazingly, miraculously taught ceramics via Zoom and had kids do play pickup last year. And it was, our teachers just went above and beyond. Ms. Travick taught dance classes on Zoom. Everyone did really incredible work last year. So I do need a motion to approve expenses. And I apologize if this isn't, the formatting didn't come across correctly. My fault.
I think you can.
Andrea,
Yeah.
just really quickly, you haven't sent that to the whole group.
I thought okay, I'll send it again then. Did I just send it to you, Nick?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So Andrea, are you
I
motioning?
make a motion to ratify these payments, please.
Okay, I'll second that motion. And then I don't have a poll for this one, so why don't we just, do you want to take it off and then we can just raise
Yep.
our hands? Okay, so all in favor, raise your hand or thumb or whatever you'd like to do. Great. Anyone that would like to vote no? Any abstentions? Okay, the yeses have it. We can
And
ratify
then
our checks.
my last 2 things, I'm not even going to talk about them, but they're informational for people who care about this stuff. I'm putting the financial year reports for the end of the year for the last fiscal year is called Financial Reports 2021-06-30. and the profit and loss statement for July, so you know what income and expenses we had. We didn't have very much. It was a quiet month. But there you have it. No action needed. It's just information. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Andrea. I appreciate it. Okay, we're gonna wrap up. I wish we had had more time to talk about all the different ways to get involved, because we actually have this really amazing board this year, and we have a lot of people that are working really hard on all these committees. So one thing I am gonna pop into the chat really quick as you all leave is a slide deck of all the different ways that you can get involved. And we will be sharing that information out next week, because we have a lot of exciting things going on with the new sports committee, college and career. There's the school, the campus upgrade efforts. There's really a lot going on. So we will follow up with all of that. And Mr. Rinaldi is also sharing the submit announcement for the website in the chat. And I want to thank everyone for your time and your energy and your patience as well. It's been a heck of a week, but we are also glad you're here and pitching in. So we will be in touch. And if we have a motion to adjourn, then we can just adjourn.
I'll move to adjourn.
Okay, I second that.
Yeah, I'll second that.
All in favor can just leave the meeting. All right, thank you all for showing up tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, Jessica. Great job.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. All right. If anyone has questions, I can stick around for a moment. Otherwise, I'll say goodnight.
I'm
Do
gonna
you wanna
end the
end the
recording.
recording?
Yeah.
That's
And
good.
yeah, I'll end the recording and then we'll figure out how to share it out.
Yes, and also I need to save the chat.